Welcome to this edition of PCE's ESOP University. Today, we are covering the ESOP transaction process. My name is Eric Zaleski, and I'm an investment banker within PCE ESOP Group. Let's get started. There are 5 very important steps when considering an ESOP. They break down into 2 decision points for the shareholders. The first being the valuation and feasibility as the discovery stage. After a decision is made to pursue an ESOP, the implementation stage begins with creating and designing the transaction, obtaining and structuring financing, and of course, closing. We will go into more detail surrounding these 5 steps in the following slides. During the valuation phase, PCE collects a short list of financial and company information that will allow us to analyze the business, thereby providing the shareholders with a free, high-level assessment of their company's value. Our process is comprised of 3 different valuation methods, which are all combined into a detailed model. Discounted cash flow analysis, PCE uses projected financials that incorporates growth, reinvestment requirements, and any one-time discretionary expenses to arrive at a normalized EBITDA. This is the inherent value of the business and is likely the most applicable to the overall valuation. PCE researches the markets to determine companies that are similar in industry, such as a competitor, and then also extends to those that are in like industries. The public companies' trading multiples are adjusted for differences such as cost and availability of capital, size, and growth rates to help us determine that comparable company analysis. We use multiple databases to find transactions within your industry with reportable data. Transactions we find may or may not have information such as sales price, multiples, and other information that is public. This approach may not be applicable if enough relevant information is not available. A feasibility study helps the shareholders, board members, and management understand if an ESOP will achieve their objectives. Once the high-level value is discussed, this next and very important step in the process is to engage PCE as your investment banker and financial advisor to complete detailed due diligence and produce this feasibility study that is all-encompassing of a transaction. The main points of a feasibility study consist of a more in-depth valuation of a company in a transaction, including analyzing multiple scenarios, which will be tailored to the shareholders' objectives. We consider the company's current legal structure and options available, which would provide the company or the shareholder significant tax advantages. We layer multiple assumptions using the company's cash flow to determine the ability to obtain liquidity and satisfy the associated debt obligations to show how much the sellers will receive in gross and net proceeds using ESOP tax advantages. We present the numerous structures and findings to the shareholders and have comprehensive discussions to determine what structure is best for all involved. This becomes the decision point of the shareholders to pursue the ESOP transaction or to put it on hold for a future date. Once you've decided to move forward, our team begins the process to develop the structure, terms and conditions, and all the financing of the overall transaction. Step 1 is assembling the team, including the company and seller attorney, accountant, and personal financial advisor. In addition, PCE will work with the board of directors and shareholders to interview the trustee of the ESOP and move to hire them. Once the team are in place, PCE puts together a robust presentation outlining the company, its history, employees, clients, financial performance, industry metrics, as well as others. The entire company team then presents it in a formal meeting to the trustee. Coupled with the presentation, we will prepare a detailed memo outlining the entire structure of the transaction. This includes, but is not limited to, sale price, financing, timeline of the transaction, executive compensation, synthetic equity, management, and the board of directors. While negotiations and conversations continue, drafting of the transaction documents commence to keep the process moving along at a smooth pace. Financing an ESOP is a crucial step. We at PCE thoroughly analyze the financing available to the shareholders and determine what cash they will receive at closing. PCE's financing process is to work with those shareholders and determine the amount of liquidity they desire. Once identified, PCE approaches multiple financing sources such as commercial banks, mezzanine or secondary lenders, or deeply subordinated creditors. We market and negotiate the best available terms and conditions to meet the shareholder objectives. If liquidity for the entire transaction is not available or desired, PCE also structures the notes which will be held by the selling shareholders. One alternative is to raise equity from private equity firms or the employees themselves. While not a commonly used approach, it is definitely one to consider during the transaction and financing process. When the design and financing and negotiations begin to reach the 7th inning of the ballgame, we work with the attorneys to create all documentation within the transaction. The financing documents are prepared by the lender's attorney and include all existing loans and the new loans associated with the ESOP. Sometimes there are multiple lenders and an intercreditor agreement will be required. Transaction documents are typically prepared by the company attorney. The most important document, the stock purchase agreement, will outline the entire details of the transaction and include specific representations and warranties. Employment agreements, synthetic equity plans, such as warrants and stock appreciation rights, as well as other corporate documents, are included within the transaction documents. Equally important is the ESOP plan and summary description, which outlines the structure of the plan, the ESOP trust, and important points that pertain to those who participate in the ESOP. The ESOP timeline can vary depending on many influences, such as complexity, financing, and regulatory matters. Our typical time frame from when we are hired as your investment banker and financial advisor to closing is around 4 months. This includes all of the 5 deal points discussed in our class today. And as our timeline indicates, most of these overlap, but with us as your investment banker, we are there to quarterback you through the process to ensure a smooth and successful transaction. Thank you very much for watching. Please make sure to check out the other classes in PCE's ESOP University.